Hello and welcome to Drop the Mic Podcast, where we discuss technology, theology, and all things in between. I want to personally thank you for joining us today. Now sit back, relax, share this, engage with the podcast that's already in progress. God bless you. The human touch can never be replaced. I'm sorry, you can get all the chat GPTs all you want to, but it's something about the human touch that goes from what the Bible calls heart to heart, breast to breast. Correct? And when you build that, and you have the human trust, and you have the IT piece, and you have an understanding of how the process and system works, then now you can baptize 50, 100, 150, 250, 700. And you can go back and have membership class for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. And now you scaled all because you said hello in the chat. The human experience in church is showing that we care, and we're demonstrating the love of God to people who need to experience Christ. And you can do that technologically, and you can do that spiritually. What's up, everybody? I'm DK Hammonds, and a little bit about me. I am a digital theologian that has been given to me by a good friend of mine. And what that person does is I get to bridge technology and theology into one place and into one conversation. And this is the Faithfully Story.
Yeah, could you tell me a little about the beginnings of your faith journey? How did you come to faith in Christ?
Yeah, man. My faith journey started at a small church called Mercy Seat Baptist Church in Little Rock, Arkansas, under the leadership of James Thoreau. And I was 7 years old. And there's pictures around of me and my story, me walking into the pulpit of the actual journey and the day that I accepted Christ into my life. My mom actually captured a picture of that, which I'm really stoked about. And so from there, it had been, 7 years old. And I even felt like I was called to the ministry at a very early age. So I have a lot of in-depth intuitive knowledge because I've been around this thing since I was a kid. And one thing that stood out to me was my pastor at the time, James Thoreau, who has gone on to be with the Lord. I went to him and said, "Hey, I feel called to minister." And his response was, "No." So imagine trying to reconcile at 7 years old. You feel God, this impression that God has on your heart at 7 years old. And he said no. And the reason he said no, and I didn't find out till like my 20s, why he said no, it was because he felt like there was more living for me to do than preaching for me to do. And he felt like it would make my preaching better if I would have lived outside of that context. Now, when people get that kind of news, they instantly go down this journey line of not deconstruction, but almost rejection, right? And you feel like, hey, I'm rejected from this. I can't preach. They won't let me do it, this, that, and the other. And it becomes a big to-do. And so I went away from church for a period of time, even after 7. So we're in my 20s. Went away from church. And you know how God works. If you attempt to go away, he'll come back to you and he'll pull you on back in. And he pulled me back in, and I have been a part of ministry and church, and I'm grateful for this journey since then. And so accepted my calling officially at like 2021, went from 2021, accepted my calling to Sunday school teacher, from Sunday school teacher to youth pastor for 4 years, from youth pastor to helping people plant churches, from helping people plant churches to training leaders, all of that in my faithfully journey. And so now I'm at a place where I'm in IT and systems, as well as being a preacher. So it gives me a very deeper understanding of how things work from a godly perspective, a seminary perspective, a theological perspective, as well as a church one. And so that's kind of how my story unfolds. I hope I told it in under 5 minutes because I've been training myself to do that all my
life. So let's backtrack to, you said you were 7?
Yeah, man.
What was the pull to go to the pulpit?
Yeah, kind of hard to say at 7 what was the pull, but it was one of those things that I couldn't shake it. And it was very clear to me that this is what I felt like I was called to do. And I'm trying not to be just super deep about it, because to me, it's not a super deep story. It was one of those stories where I got hit with an anvil like Tom and Jerry. No, 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 no. This is one of those stories where I got baptized and I instantly felt over time that this is the way that God would have me to go. And there were certain promptings like somebody speaking over my life and saying, "You're going to teach people and teach the nations at 12." Okay. Well, I remember I didn't fully go into it because he told me no. But there was those promptings just kind of slowly nudging me back. And so that's kind of how my story kind of unfolds, man. Nothing traumatic happened. It was all a God type of thing that I'm super grateful for.
So, what was the progression that led you to finally admit, oh, the call I felt at 7 is actually the call at 20, whatever?
Yeah, man. So my testimony is when in my adult years, now I had gotten married, had kids, and that calling thing came back. And I was fighting it. I was really out there in the streets having the best time of my life. I was out there having a great time, drinking, whatever the case may be. I was out there doing it. And one day I was sitting in one of those little small clubs that I probably shouldn't have been in at that time of night. And God spoke. And he said, "Leave here, or I'm going to do something for you to leave here. It is your choice." And I had to sit with that in this kind of inebriated state. So I told my best friend, Kelly Shorter is his name, "Hey, brother, it's time for me to go home." So I went home, sat in the parking lot, sat in my driveway. Young family, remember, and I'm just out here doing my thing, kind of almost running from this thing. And I sat in the parking lot and I felt this tension on my chest. It wasn't heartburn. It wasn't gas. It was this tension that I was wrestling with. Went in the house, couldn't sleep. Days on end, just couldn't sleep. Kept feeling this tension. Asking God, okay, what is it that I need to be doing? And one day I went into church and I was just like, I'm so tired. I cannot do this way anymore. I got to find me a different way. And I went up for prayer to my pastor and I said, I just feel like this is the time. This is the time to accept my calling into ministry. And the pastor at the time is Robert Coates. And he was like, okay, cool. And from that moment forward, I've been in the preaching, teaching, leading ministry since that moment.
How old were you?
At that moment, I was about 20 when that happened.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you met your wife before this call, right? And you got married.
Yeah, I have a different wife. Y'all don't edit that out. That's fine. But
no, it's okay.
I was married prior to, and so that my children's mother at the time, yes, we were married, and she understood it, but she didn't understand the tension that I had to wrestle with because she wasn't called to the ministry to do that. I was called to the ministry to do that. I was trying to explain it to her and I couldn't quite put the words to explanation of it. I can just feel like God is kind of pulling me out of this thing that I thought was a part of my life into what I feel like is my life. And so it was almost like this alignment of calling and purpose converging on one another. And now the timing had to be right. The acknowledgement had to be right. The place had to be right. All those things had to be right so that God could use me further. And yeah, I was like 20 years old. Preached my first sermon by 21. Took my first youth pastorate position at New Hope Baptist Church at like 24. So I was in ordained ministry at that point. Helped plant my first church at 27. with another friend of mine, Pastor Corey Hughes in Arlington, Texas. And then from there, went to another church, Disciple Central Community Church here in DeSoto, where I was a youth pastor there for a period of time. Then I went from youth pastoring to training leaders and campus pastor. So that's kind of like my conversion. And now I'm in systems and IT. So that's kind of how it went, man.
Yeah, it's always the perfect storm of like
no
all
doubt.
these things, and it's like, poof, right? It's like creation.
Absolutely.
Do you mind if I ask more questions about your first marriage?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So this is a question I asked to all pastors who just never started off being a pastor, but then after they got married, became pastor. Because like you said, the wife never signed up because they didn't know you like that. And afterwards, it's this whole new life. Yeah, did that affect the first marriage, or how did she take it?
Good question. I would think at first, because we were both young, we had no idea. There wasn't a whole lot of mentorship that we were seeking out. She was going along the ride because I was the husband. And so she was we were both getting training as we went. I'll be honest with you. It wasn't necessarily the best way, but it was the training that we received at the time. And so for her, if I'm honest and transparent, she struggled quite a lot, because again, I signed up for the regular guy. I didn't necessarily sign up for this preaching ministry and living in a fishbowl and being scrutinized or giving up your time and talents for someone else. That's not what I signed up for. And so that was a tension that we had to consistently work through as a couple. But I don't think that was the demise of the marriage at that point. That was just something that we had to work through. That honestly, I don't think that we did. We never, came to a full thing of it, because for me, I was always trying to sense the voice of God. And for her, it probably felt like I was pulling her in like 5 different directions. And that could be unsettling. I don't know where the next place is going to be, this, that, and the other. I have 2 younger kids. I'm trying to establish them and equally try to establish myself. So sometimes accepting a calling can be a selfish matter. If we are like truthfully honest, this is you and God, and then you include these layers of family, and now family has to put aside their lives so that you can chase after the Spirit of God. So you think. So you have to be sure and ready. So that's kind of how it went, bro.
Is there anything that you understand now in your older age, looking back, maybe you could have done something different? Not that to like save the marriage, but just kind of ease a transition for a person who, again, didn't sign up for it. Yeah. But maybe these are the things I should have thought about or talked about to help ease the transition.
Yeah, bro. I think for me, it is communicating. Communicate what you got going on inside of you. Even if you don't have the words quite yet to share what you know. But at the same time, others need to offer space so that you can share. And it's easy to land that stuff down of what God may be doing or couldn't do, or it should do. So that would be the lesson. If I'm talking to someone now and you're in the tension of relational tension with your marriage, potentially, your old marriage, or whatever the case may be, that you sit down and you attempt to communicate. And I wish I would have went to counseling then. I don't think that would have helped, but I would have been able to better put into words what I had going on inside of me to my significant other at the time.
So my next question is about your kids, if you don't mind.
Sure, man.
Because a lot of the podcasts, like more than half of the people I interview grew up in broken homes where the parents divorced.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, even my parents got divorced, but I was like older. And I've shared like, when you grow up in like a tense household, all you want them to do is separate. But when you get older, you appreciate it that they stayed longer than they did.
Yeah.
But like now I have an opportunity for you. Like, how did you break it to your kids? Like, this family's going to change. And then later you get remarried. Like, how do you introduce that to your kids? Like, it's not their fault. And like, this is just kind of like the messiness of this world, and there's enough grace for God to like redeem it all.
Well, you're always trying to find a place to explain to young children what's going on with older adults. And in my finding, you can explain it to them, but if other adults aren't on board with explanation or they have a different viewpoint of explanation, then your explanation is going to kind of get caught up in the murkiness of this relationship tension. So for me, my kids were young, and I sat down and explained to them, hey, dad is going to be moving and dad is going to be doing the following. I've always tried to have a clear, open communication with my children about me. I can't explain for everybody else, but about me. And say, hey, this is what's going on with dad, and this is what I have to do. And so for me, I moved to another state. I moved to Texas while they lived in Arkansas. And they were young. So it's like, oh, okay, daddy. Are you going to still visit and come see us? Of course. But then time goes by. And you going to visit may be a little different because you're 400 miles away and your money is just not adding up. And so you have to be honest with your kids. And they're going to be angry, and that's okay. Once they mitigate that at an early age, then they have the luxury of having introspection and retrospection. And they'll be able to see exactly the point you were trying to make and or do. So my son comes to me now and like, hey, dad, I get it. At 24, I understand what you had to do. I understand why you had to do it. I did not understand it now. I got you. Cool. You know, you guys were always at the forefront. So in terms of the relationship, I consider blended families to be this crock pot. And yeah, you can put it on low, but if everything is not seasoned right, it's not going to be well for everybody. And you have to find the happy medium that is not going to cause arguments, but simply get the ship on the right direction and keep everything going. And so that was like the middle part, end of my kids. My kids are adults now. Smooth sailing, no problems. And so I think the best thing I learned out of that is create your boundaries when you're transitioning. It's going to be tough when you have children, but the other parties need to know what you once had, you didn't have. Now you have this. Here is your boundary to operate in. Here's how I'm going to handle you with the utmost respect. I'm not going to treat you, wrong on social media or talk about you bad. I'm going to be straight up and upstanding for you because my children are watching, and I don't need them to see another side that they don't need to see.
No, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I think as I get older, because when you're younger and you grow up really like conservative, you think like
sure.
Marriage, no divorce whatsoever, and I get it. Like we want that to be the ideal, but just because like my understanding now is just because a marriage ends doesn't mean the family ends.
That's
you
correct.
know what I mean? Yeah, like to have good relationships with people and say I'm thankful that we had this because we have children now, and that's the blessing.
Yeah.
But it's not the end of the world, and we have enough grace. And Jesus says marriage is temporary on this earth. It's a problem we need to deal with here. So
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. So one last question about marriage, because we have this time.
Yeah, man.
How did you feel meeting your current wife, and did like your past experience kind of make you hesitant to getting remarried? Because the statistics outside of at least church and Christian context is like as you get more married, the divorce rate is higher. Yeah. But like I feel like if you kind of learned from the past, now you have better prepared for the tools to like be more successful in this one.
For sure. My wife Aisha, amazing. She is the quintessential introverted, powerful storm that I wouldn't say storm, but steady ship that is always moving ahead. And I met her at a friend's house who is a chef friend of ours that we share mutually. Her name is Chef Tam. She's out of Memphis, Tennessee. And upon going to our house one day in September, she was cooking. And of course, DK loves some good cooking, brother. Please understand that. So she was over there cooking, and I walked in, and my favorite movie was on, which is Coming to America. And they're watching Coming to America, and I'm like, oh, cool. And so in comes this woman whose hair is all over her head. She's combing her kids' hair. And I was like, oh, never seen this lady before. Love her quiet strength. Love her approach to her children. I'm interested. Let me just see. And so I end up having a conversation with her and Chef Tam after the fact. And I inboxed her, hey, I would love to, take you out on a date. And her response was, if you spell my name correctly, you can. And 10 years later, I have been with the same woman since that time. Now, let's back it up and talk about how much time was spent on a healing journey to ensure that I didn't take trauma, drama, or additional stuff into the next. Let's talk about also what it takes to love yourself, because the only way God can send you better love is if you already love yourself, right? And so now you have a person who loves themselves, a person with the drama behind them, a good understanding of their life, a pretty good career going for themselves, and he's a preacher. Now, quick story here. I never told her I was a preacher until after we were dating, because I knew exactly what that would do. Because I've been through that. And she has been helpful and along for the journey. And I was like, where were you at 10 years prior to? Because I could have been out of here prior to that. And so that's kind of how that went, brother. And so I've been married to Aisha. We share 4 kids among us. All of our kids are adults in their respective careers, doing amazing things. I have one daughter who's married now. And so I would not trade this journey and doing life with her. She is my confidant, my friend. She is my idea wall where I can just throw stuff off of. She's the safe place for me. And she doesn't make it hard for me to actually explain what I feel like God is doing within me. And she is an excellent collaborator and partner, so that when it comes to doing the things of God, it does help that my wife is also a praise and worship leader. She sings, she's in the church, she's involved, she understands the dynamics. And so we've been rocking strong ever since, brother.
Dude, you're making me jealous. You need to stop. Does she have a sister? I'm very single, bro.
She has a couple of sisters. Yo.
Moving on. I don't want to get anyone in trouble.
Please don't clip this out. Keep this
in. I'm definitely keeping this in. I'm not ashamed.
Yes, man. No, she has 2 sisters. 2.
I'm glad you said love yourself, because I am beginning to understand that's so important.
Yes, man.
Because I think the world is confused that loving yourself doesn't mean you're full of yourself, right? There's a difference, right? Loving yourself means, oh, God created me this way. Yeah. He's given me this life. Yeah. I'm so thankful. I actually love my life and who I am in my strengths and weaknesses, because I thank God for making me the way I am. And it's just you genuinely, authentically, finally accepting yourself as you are.
Yeah, man.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah. And when I live out that way, I'm just more confident of
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like this. I don't like this. Yeah.
My wife said something like this, so important. How can you, this is from her perspective, how can you expect for me to love you, and I can see visibly that you don't love yourself? So you need to make sure that you love you, because I can love you the way that you love you, because you're going to emulate that. And so I think that's so important when it comes to somebody loving you where you are, but they have to see that in demonstration. You feel me?
She's a wise woman. You're lucky.
Man, no doubt.
So let's pivot and talk about, how did you start getting into technology stuff and like merging that with theology?
Well, good question. Well, technology came about because, man, I made a transition in my career when I moved here. I was doing a lot of customer service work, and I wanted something a little bit more stable, something that I could grow with. And so a friend of mine called me and was like, "Hey, man," because I was working at another place in insurance. "Hey, man, how you feel about learning SQL?" I was like, first of all, what is SQL? I have no idea. And what is SAP? I have no idea. He said, if I train you and I pay you this amount of money, would you come? And the money was astronomical. And I went. And I've been on the trajectory of IT in terms of any support roles, all the way to director for the span of 15 years. And so a lot of my work is done in the startup world. I used to have a company that was bought by Angie's List called Fix Repair that I worked with as a director of IT. Rebel Support, or Rebel POS. If you ever went to Cinnabon and you scroll their POS system down, that was our team working with that. And so I work with those companies, helping building their support structures. And God kind of made it to where I transitioned out of there, was working for some churches and collaborating. And what ended up happening was, it was so surreal. My wife called me one day and was like, "Hey, this church is hiring. Would you consider taking your talents to a church?" I said, "Now look, I'm a rebel. I think outside the box. This may not work." So I tried it because she told me to do it. And I've been with this particular church, working in this particular position for the last 3 years, helping support, structurally support, technologically support the organization as a whole, with over 17 employees plus, and just really structuring it from a system standpoint and making sure that processes and systems are correct and well and able to help us, here's my word, scale. You'll love that word, scale. Every church needs to be thinking, how can we multiply ourselves? That's the Bible, that's the gospel. When the Gospels say he sent them out 2 by 2, it wasn't so they could have dinner at the STK or Perry's or Capitol Grill. No, it was to multiply themselves. It was to scale the gospel. And that's a conversation we don't really have in terms of scaling. How do we scale the gospel to get it to the highways and byways to compel men to come? So that is how, in a short form, I got involved in tech.
So let's have that conversation. What is your understanding and approach to scaling the gospel? Because a part of scaling is that I see a lot of people trying to scale their organizational identity, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're like scaling disciples, you know?
Yeah, man. So, okay. I'm going to give you my brain trust. And anybody who may be listening, you can have this. If you're thinking digitally, and I'm going to go through a process and you're going to be able to kind of follow probably. If you're thinking digitally, by me just speaking to someone in the chat is scalable. Point blank, period. Hello, how you doing? Where are you from? This becomes a repetition. Repetition becomes a thing that people expect. They interact. That becomes scalable. And from that chat, digitally, I'm then going to invite them to a physical location or a small group. And this, you can follow this in the Bible, I promise you. I'm not off the scriptures. I'm pretty much on it, but I'm just using tech to layer it. I'm going to invite them to a small group. I'm going to invite them to a meeting or a church or a church service or whatever the case may be. And then from that invite, I'm going to potentially get them plugged into anything adult ministry like a small group or a serve team or a membership team or whatever the case may be. And then from there, I'm going to ask them, hey, I see that you're here. So glad you're here. Would you mind serving? They're going to say, absolutely. I'm excited. Let's go. They've been baptized, membership. Now they're serving. Now it's time for them to go and disciple someone else. I have just talked through in less than 3 minutes how to scale the ministry so that people can experience God in his truest form. Now, in that scaling, add your technological pieces that do not remove the human touch. The human touch can never be replaced. I'm sorry, you can get all the chat GPTs all you want to, but it's something about the human touch that goes from what the Bible calls heart to heart, breast to breast. Correct? And when you build that, and you have the human touch, and you have the IT piece, and you have an understanding of how the process and system works, then now you can baptize 50, 100, 150, 250, 700. And you can go back and have membership class for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Then you can go back and you can say, now go serve and deploy them to their various service areas and opportunities. Or go find a small group and deploy them to those various small groups. And now you scaled all because you said hello in the chat. And that's how you merge the two worlds together.
I'm so glad you said that, and I completely agree. And this is why people freaking out about AI, they don't understand like what it means to be human, right? Like humans need other humans. Like Absolutely. Even Jesus said, the Bible says man is not good alone. That's right. So technology, if it isolates you, you're screwed because Absolutely. You're being like unhumanized or dehumanized.
I love that. Yes.
So that's really good in a more macro sense. Yes. So coming down to practical things, like what do you do with your church that kind of like make sure you have those human touch points?
Sure, man. So human touch point number one, let's go back through that same process. Human touch point number one is I spoke to you in a chat, but I offered you prayer. Human touch point. I spoke to you in the chat, but I invited you to church and I followed up with the invite. Okay. This is where you can insert plan your visits and follow-up calls or text messages and follow-up calls. Then from there, that person wants to join. Okay, solid. Now they fill out the QR code, provide the information, and receive 1 or 2 emails saying, we're so glad you're here. This, that, and the other. Then they get a text message directly from the leader. Meeting is going to be here. This, that, and the other. I'm going through and I'm showing you step by step on what you need to do. Okay, then from there, now they say they come up to you in church, or they come up to you in a chat, or they email you. Hey, man, is there anything else I could be doing? Yeah. Have you considered joining a small group? No, I hadn't considered that. What are those? Now I'm explaining the small groups, what they are, how they work, how they're going to increase and fortify your faith. Then I'm going to walk you over to the small group domain where you can sign up for a small group. Then you're going to see the leader's name. You're going to email that leader. That leader's going to email you back. So glad that you're here. So glad that you chose. Then you move on, so forth and so on, right? Every process that I create, because I am a relationship guy, has the human element in it. It's unavoidable. You cannot avoid it. There has to be some interaction, some conversation, some talk, some throughput so that people can understand and know, here's the whole reason for it. Understand and know that you care. That's it. Showing the human experience in church is showing that we care and we're demonstrating the love of God to people who need to experience Christ. And you can do that technologically, and you can do that spiritually.
So after they go through the whole process,
Yeah.
a lot of churches, they have a problem of like, oh, our job is done. They're in a small group.
Your job is
But
not
they
done.
never, exactly. I know, because we're on the same page, brother. So could you unpack, okay,
Yeah.
they're in the group,
Yeah.
they're serving.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get them to repeat for another person that they just experienced?
So now we're talking about discipleship. If you guys do not know, I do have a book about the 7 steps of digital discipleship. Please go to my website. I only selling it for $7. It's worth to pick up, so you can kind of get a process of what I'm saying. So when we're talking about discipleship in a small group, we have several different ways in which you can be discipled, right? And I don't think people are using one of these ways a lot, but I think we should. The first way is, yes, you need to create a tunnel from your small group into something that, okay, let's back it up. So if I'm in a group and I'm the group leader, my job in the group is to assemble the Power Rangers and to know strengths and weaknesses of the Power Rangers. Once I've assembled them and I understand their strengths and weaknesses, and now it's my time to fortify them. Why am I fortifying them? Because I'm trying to see as a leader who can lead, who can be the white Power Ranger or the red one, and lead the troops to battle if I'm present or not. Once I've identified that, then I think, here's a free one. Then now you can create pipelines. You can create your pipeline for leadership, discipleship, and you can create your pipeline just for people who just want to kind of stay there and be steady. There's 3 layers in between. You're going to determine, okay, you probably need to be a leader. So here are the steps I identify for you that I think would be dope. And you identify them steps, and here's the thing, you walk with them through it. Discipleship is about doing life together. It is the relationship equity that you build with another person to walk beside them and graciously show them the way. That is discipleship in its purest form. Now, how do we flip that and make it digital? Well, some churches can create learning management systems that could replicate a part of this journey. Hey, I want to go deeper into the word. What we created at our church was called Foundations of Faith. I built the interface that is created for the Foundations of Faith. And ultimately, our pastor is walking through the journey of discipleship to give them foundational tools that it's going to take for them to stick in the church ministry. Now you've done that. You've shown me that you can follow a process. Now let's see if you're ready to lead. So I've discipled you here. Now I'm going to disciple you in leadership. And from discipleship of leadership, now you're ready to be deployed. That is the process in terms of adult assimilation and how they're interwoven into discipleship and how we can replicate the people along the way. There has to be something within that process that teaches people that they shouldn't be afraid to replicate themselves. So many times in church, man, we just want to have these superstars, these rock stars. I am only as good as the team that I build. And if I build a good quality team and they show up to bat every time we do it, they're going to be excellent. They're going to get after it. It's going to be powerful. And they're going to be consistent. Why? Because they've seen the demonstration of that in real time. So that is a way. There are other technological ways that you can do it. You can do this through text. You can send people short form codes that they can go somewhere else and get more discipleship. You have Right Now Media, who also can offer a level of discipleship. You have now ChatGPT that can create discipleship plans for you, or Pulpit AI that can take the pastor's sermon and then take his sermon and then reroute it into discipleship plans. So we have a plethora of tools that we can use to disciple. We need to determine the process of discipleship and then add the tools later.
Yeah, your church is so lucky to have you. You got all the tools and knowledge, man. Because I'm just like, everything you're so like this past Easter, they were reading The Road to Emmaus, and those guys were like like, wasn't our hearts burning when he was talking? And I feel the same way. Every word is like burning up my heart of like, yes. Because the problem with superstars is, one, they don't scale, and two, they get old and die. So what are you gonna do? You know?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And you have to always be thinking. As a leader, I've been training leaders for a long time, as you can see, and I'm always thinking, and I'm never fearful of this one question: who can replace me? I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of that at all. If you feel like you have it, come get it. I want you to have it. And I want you to go as far as you can go. And I want to give you the tools that I can give you so that you can be a better version of who I am. I'm absolutely not afraid of that. Right. And so I have people around me who are stronger, who can build databases, who work in corporate America, and they work for me. And I'm just simply building their lives up. So when it's time for me to go do something different, or I need to be over here for 5 minutes, you don't panic. So the best thing about leadership for me that I've trained people not to do is not to panic. There's nothing you can do to break this. We can fix it. It may take us some time, but we can fix it. So yeah, man, I get a chance to do this. I get a chance to help churches in my consultancy build this kind of stuff. So that they can see, okay, here's where you need to go. That is, one, biblical, two, theologically supporting the Bible, and three, able to scale the results. We've just had this conversation in multi-layer. So you have to catch all of this and you'll see exactly what I mean. And this is how you do it. And so, yeah, I'm one of those superstars, man. I don't care. I am Scottie Pippen. You can be Jordan. You can go for 40, but who's going to lock the team down? That player who's going to do that? Who's going to shoot the 3 ball when you can't, when you're sick? That is me. I don't mind coming behind and being as supportive as I need to. Why? Because it is building the kingdom of God. And that is the ultimate success measure for me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I always said I work really hard so I don't have to work anymore. Yeah, and I want to like be irrelevant because people don't understand when you're up on top, there's a million things going on and
Absolutely.
you are responsible for so many people.
Yep.
And I'm like, why does people want this? I don't understand. I don't, like, literally, if God did not call me to do the certain things that I feel like I'm called to do,
Yeah, man.
I would just be in bed, like Netflix and chilling, and I'd be like, I'm good. I'm just waiting for Jesus to come back.
Hey, man.
Leave me alone.
Yeah, I actually like the idea. I mean, because now I'm at a place where I can support my church and support other churches to do this. And I would love to continue to support the other churches who are just kind of on the cusp of thinking about, how do I create this digital discipleship model? I'm surprised about the tools that the churches aren't using, like their customer relationship management systems, and how that system alone can support and help you call people, or help you text people, or help you keep in contact with people, or help you track milestones. Like there may be a person that, for instance, has failed through the cracks. Well, your milestones will determine where they fail and who needs to contact them. So having these types of measurables help you see your job at an easier rate and pick that person up faster so that we can run and walk together along the way.
I mean, it's just human nature to be comfortable with the status quo.
Yeah.
And until something drastic happens or you realize an impending doom, then you'll be proactive. But a lot of people are just reactive.
No doubt.
But you know, the beauty of the kingdom is that, like, bad churches, they fail, and all those people go to good churches. So as long as you are building a good church, you don't have to like really market. You just wait until the flood starts coming. But like you said, you need that system and process, because how are you going to do this thing when everyone's running to your church?
Absolutely. No doubt. Absolutely correct, man. Absolutely correct.
I have some ending personal questions I ask. What was your fondest childhood memory?
Oh, man, childhood is so long ago for me. Fondest childhood memory. off the top of my head. Going hunting with a pastor. His name's John B. Harris. He's gone to be with the Lord, and his sons, and being able to watch how a dad interacted with his boys. And that's always stuck with me since I was little. We didn't catch a thing. Matter of fact, we shot in the woods and a rabbit jumped, and we never saw that rabbit again. But the camaraderie that we had in that moment it always stuck with me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Man, I kind of speechless at that. What is something you love but often fail at?
Man, I love cars, but I'm no mechanic. I couldn't tell you. I could tell you how to change some oil, change a tire, but other than that, nah. And it's not much. It's not much that I fail at, because I'm kind of well-rounded, but it's things that stop me, and I have to just say, "Hey, wait a minute." So, podcasting, I'm good at. I'm really good at it, and I'm good at it because I understand the whole nature of the beast. But at first, I stopped a lot. I stopped because I didn't have people, support, understanding the mechanisms, understanding how powerful being consistent is, until I got older and I understood it better. And now I can put those mechanisms in place where I can just create content, have conversations, and then somebody else can take it and do something else with it. So I had to learn that. So yeah, podcasting was one of those things I'm really good at, and I failed at miserably in the front end.
I have a question about cars because I'm not a car guy, but I know a lot of guys are. And like even right now in New York, there's the Jacob Javits Center, the auto show.
Yeah.
What is it about cars for you that you enjoy?
Man, I used to have an 85 Cutlass that mirrored an 86 Grand Prix, and I own both of those cars. So I love muscle cars. I love how they float, the air shocks, how they float when they take bumps. There's not a hard, thing like that. I love the aesthetic, the look. It looks like strength. It looks like if you hit it, it just bend and we can fix it. I love those things. And here's what's funny. My mom owned a Nissan Maxima when I was little. I bought a Nissan Maxima when I got older. And I love it because it's fast. And I can put my sport mode on and I can be floating at 100. And I don't advise this, but this is Texas and we drive fast. I can be floating at 100 and I probably think I was doing 80. But I've gotten more aware of that. So I like speed. I like aesthetic of car. I love interior. I used to love the sound a lot. So I used to help put sound in people's cars back in the day. But those are the things that I enjoy the most about cars.
Yeah, everything you said is just dead to me. I don't care. But it's fascinating, right? About like how as human beings we are wired to love, right? And appreciate. Yeah. And when you find out all the little different things we love, but it brings out this joy in us, it's it's such a gift. So I'm glad the cars is for you.
Yeah. That's one of the things. It ain't, that's one of them. It's basketball is absolutely my passion. I love the LA Lakers. I'm a Laker fan through and through. I'm not one of those LeBron fans. No, we're talking about Kurt Rambis. We're talking about Magic Johnson, Michael Thompson, Van Exel. I've been a Laker fan for 20 plus years. One of my favorite teams. And that started because my mom bought me a starter jacket, the satin ones back in the day. And my first one was a Laker jacket. Yeah,
I've been a Knicks fan since like 94.
Oh, I pray for your spirit every day.
It's a roller coaster. They're good this year, so there's a little bit of hope. But at this point, I'm like, talk to me when they're in the conference finals. Like, I don't care. Like, I've been disappointed. Look, I'm a Knicks fan, a Mets fan, a Jets fan, and sometimes in the playoffs, the Rangers fan. So, yeah.
Oh, man. You got
It is what it is.
It definitely.
I always joke, no, it's good. God is teaching me suffering, enduring long suffering. I know what it is to be like Christ.
You definitely.
What are you hoping for at Faithly?
Oh man. Number one, that Faithly will get an app soon. I don't know if it's coming, but it needs to come on down the pipeline.
It's going to be a while before we get mobile, but it'll be there.
I love that. That Faithly would build genuine community for people to find faith, hope, and work. I think you guys have something very more atheistic in terms of their build out. You guys are centering Christ, and that part I can totally get behind. So my hope is that more people would be exposed to Faithly. I hope this conversation does that. And I hope that Faithly would collaborate more with other brands like a Social Media Church and myself so that we can really promote and get you guys out there.
How can we be praying for you and your family?
Man, currently my wife Aisha is doing her doctorate, so be in prayer for her. She finishes next year. So she's, gun-ho for that. One of my daughters is in nursing school right now. She finishes end of this year. End of this year. And my son drives trucks, so keep him safe while he's on that road. And my other daughter, my baby, she's in school and she works full time. But as for me, I'm praying for next steps. What is God doing next? Kind of sensing, what he's doing in the earth realm, as well as in the spirit, and who I need to partner with, and that they bring me that, and partnering with them brings joy, peace, financial success. And so those things is what I need to pray for.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Indeed, my brother. Anytime.
All right. That's it, guys. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. My hope is that the podcast added value to your life. Please, please, please subscribe from your favorite application, leave us a review, and even follow us on YouTube for your up-to-date information. Thank you. Peace.